to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nache from NacheSnow.com. Welcome. Okay, today I have on Alana from Etta and Billy, which is an all-natural skincare line. And she has been doing this for a decade. So you guys are going to love this episode. There's so many tips and just life lessons in there. So even if you're not trying to start a skincare line, I think you're going to get so much out of this episode. Before I start this episode, just a couple of quick housekeeping things. One, she drops like so many amazing products and links and all kind of stuff in this episode. Don't worry about writing it down. You could just go to the show notes for this page, which is at NacheSnow.com/84. And I have all the links on the page for you, so you don't have to worry about hunting them all down. Also, if you would like to support the podcast, you could do that two ways. When you go over to the website, there's a link to a course where it's all about how to organize your life to make time for your passion. So I'm pre-selling that right now. So not only do you support the podcast, but you support yourself because it will help you do what you need to do to make time for the things you love. And then, or also if you're kind of like, no, courses aren't my thing, I have the Life Cleanse Journal over there, and that was created to help you get a better understanding of who you are by asking you several questions in 10 different categories like growth, health, relationship, family, finance. And that's really helped me over the years. I have a thriving 9-to-5 career. I have tons of hobbies. I have no debt except my mortgage. These are the questions and the things that I did in order to kind of get to where I am today. So I'm just kind of passing that on if you're in a place where you feel it's time for a change. So anywho, if you want to support the podcast, just head over to the website and you will find all the things. But anywho, I just want to just jump right into this episode because I had just such a good time talking to Alana, and I think her story is just fun and amazing. So have a listen. All right. Hello, Alana. Welcome to the Studio 78 podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I cannot wait to dig into your story, and I promise not to call you Etta.
It's okay. You would not be the first or second or 10th person to call me that, and it's totally okay. It was my grandma's name, so I'm okay. I'm okay if people think that that's my name. It's a part
and
of
it's
me.
a cool name too.
Yeah, it's such a cool name. I know. It's pretty hilarious that's. I never even thought about it when I was a child. Obviously, I was just like Grandma Etta, and then I was like, that just kind of sounds old when I was little. When I had no perspective.
Well, it's like when you're a kid, you never do, right? Because I remember my great-grandmother's name, even though this would not be, I don't know if it would work as a business name, but her name was Coquessie. So that's a mouthful, but that's like one of those old school names.
It's beautiful. I feel like that could be a wonderful business name. I could see that being product-based, like a beverage.
Maybe. Coquessie. Yeah, you're right, because it has a ring. It's unique, right? You don't hear that name anymore. Yeah.
No, and if you heard that, you would remember it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yes, you would remember it.
But sorry, okay, I got us off on a tangent. So let the audience know about you before Etta and Billy.
Sure. So I am from a small town in Northern California. I grew up on I'll call it a mini farm. It wasn't a real farm at all. My parents, we just liked animals, and we always had a garden. And so I spent a lot of time outside. And when I was in high school, I made the decision that I wanted to be in publicity or public relations. So I went off to college and I got a degree in communications, and I was lucky enough to do an internship for a production company. So I got a little taste of the Hollywood, LA thing and decided that was definitely not for me. So I'm very thankful that I found that out early. But then I got a job at a PR firm after college. And at first I was super excited. And as we dug deeper into like the work and the firm, I kind of was like, that just kind of doesn't feel good to me. I didn't like the clients that they worked for. It just never seemed like a great fit. So I moved to San Francisco because my best friend had moved up to the Bay Area. And I was like, well, why not? Why don't I try it out? You know, bigger city, more opportunities. So I thought I'm going to work in PR again. Maybe it was just that firm. Maybe it was just those clients. And so it took me almost 2 years to actually get a job at a PR firm, but I got a job at this. I know.
That's dedication.
Let me just tell you, the job market in San Francisco, at least I moved to San Francisco in 2004. Oh my gosh. I moved to San Francisco in 2004, and the job market at the time was very challenging. And so anyway, I was lucky enough to get this job at a small boutique PR firm with amazing clients, like, you know, museums and the ballet and the symphony and things like that. So I was like, great, excited. And I was starting at the bottom because I didn't have any work experience except with the prior PR firm. And so I got into the job, and it was brutal. It was not what I thought it would be. You know, I think day to day it was super challenging. The people that worked there were amazing. I had amazing coworkers. It just so happened the founder of that firm was brilliant, but super intense and a major micromanager. So I had the pressure from that, which felt really uncomfortable. And then as I was working there and they were giving me more responsibilities to sort of explore actually, you know, what you do as a PR professional. And I realized that I hated it. I realized that I didn't enjoy the work. I didn't enjoy the process. And it was hard because, again, like, the people were great. I loved the client base, but the work was really challenging, and that environment was also challenging. And so I found myself in the place where I was so miserable that I would, there was like a little alleyway behind the building that I worked in, that I would go out there and I would call my mom and I would like cry during my breaks, and I would like pull myself together and go back in there. And she kind of was like, why are you still there? You need to leave. And I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I had this weird idea in my head that I needed to give it a year. And so I was very committed to staying there, even though I was miserable. So she, being the wise woman that she is, suggested that I get a hobby. She was like, why don't you, if you're not willing to leave, you need to focus your attention on something else so that you're not constantly thinking about how, upset and frustrated you are. And also, the whole like looming of what the heck am I going to do with my life? Since I thought this is what I wanted to do with my life.
Right. So now it's just like, okay, well, now what? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now what? Now what do I do? So she and I kind of was like, okay, Mom, sure. I don't know. Hobby? What do you mean? I like to read. So, which is a hobby. I'm not diminishing as a hobby, but I think she meant something a little more involved. And so she got me, she ended up buying me a book on soap making for Christmas, and which seemed kind of random, except for the fact that I was obsessed with body care products when I was in high school. Obsessed. To the point where I would, every time I went to the mall, which wasn't that often because we lived really far away from the mall, but whatever. When I got the chance to go to the mall, I would spend almost all my money on body care products. So I had like this massive collection, and my mom started saying like, you are not allowed to bring home any body care products. Like she was like, you cannot, you literally cannot. We have no more space. Anyway, so she knew that. And then I also love to cook. I've always loved food. I've loved food since I was a wee child. I pretty much will try anything at least one time. There are very few things I will not eat. And so she was like, well, this process is similar, plus it kind of involves this thing that you used to be really into. And so I got that book, and I read it cover to cover. And it's the natural soap making book, if anyone is interested.
And I just want to say, I love how your mom was like, oh, you haven't found a hobby yet? Let me give you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, here, let me help you.
Let me help you.
Yes, you need something. She was probably sick of me calling her and crying on the phone all the time. So she thought, let's deal with this another way. And so I read that book cover to cover. My dad built me a soap mold, and I got all the materials, and I made my first batch of soap. And in the process of making it, I started to freak out because there's this certain point in soap making that you get to that then you can add like the fun stuff, like the essential oils or the botanicals or whatever. And I wasn't seeing this thing because I was learning from a book, right? And so I'm freaking out. So I'm stirring and stirring and stirring and stirring. And I'm stirring by hand, by the way. Stirring and stirring and stirring. And in the book it says like this should take, I don't know, I think it had said maybe 15 minutes at the most of stirring. And I'm stirring and stirring, and it's like half an hour has gone by. Stirring and stirring. I don't see this. An hour has gone by. Stirring. My arm is obviously my arm is very tired. I rope in my boyfriend. He stirs. We like take turns stirring for I think it was almost 4 hours.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. It was crazy. By the time I was finally like, you know what? We're going to dump everything in here, and it's either going to work or it's not. Right. Because I cannot keep stirring this thing. And so we do it. We pour it off. With soap, you have to wait about 24 to 48 hours or so before you can actually uncover and see if what you did worked or not. And so we uncovered that batch of soap, and I cut into it, and it was beautiful. And I was just hooked from then on.
Wow.
It was magic. And so then I started, I was reading all these books, and was very lucky that there was a creative DIY studio that taught classes in the Bay Area near San Francisco. And so about a year into me making soap and having fun with all this stuff, and I was still working that terrible job, I started taking classes at this studio, which was awesome. And then simultaneously, I thought to myself, you know what? I love this so much. Why don't I go work at a natural product company? Like maybe I can become their formulator or work in their scenting department, or even just whatever. I'll do anything because I really just love this whole like product creation. And at that same time, I was learning a lot about ingredients. So I've got really into natural ingredients and organic ingredients, and like realizing that there was a lot of junk in a lot of the products that we buy on a day-to-day basis, and a lot of just filler ingredients, to be honest, just things that are pointless but we're paying for. And I wanted everything I put on me to actually have an action and do something. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to school. So there is a school called the California School of Herbal Studies. And it's an herbalist school that does like a certificate program in Western herbalism. I think it's a 9-month program. And so I was like, that's it. I'm going to do that.
Wow.
And it was not in San Francisco. And I lived in San Francisco. It was in a town called Forestville, which is about an hour and a half from the city. So I commuted 3 days a week to school, there and back, for 9 months to go.
Now,
program.
Were you still working full time, or did you just say?
Was working part-time because the courses were 3 full days a week, pretty much, and with some weekend stuff, and then some kind of like, I'll call them field trips. I don't know how else to, because we would like go wild harvest things. Like we would go into the woods and try and find stuff. And one time we went to the coast and we harvested seaweed.
Oh, wow. That's like, real from the earth stuff. Yes.
Oh, yes. And so I actually, I'll back up just a smidgen. In that 2-year period when I was trying to find a PR job, I started working at a law firm because I was like, well, maybe I'll be a lawyer. And then I started working there and I was like, nope, definitely not going to do that. That's definitely not my calling. And so it just so happened that I still had friends that worked at the law firm. So when I decided to go back to school, they were like, well, we need some help in our recruiting department. We'll hire you part-time. And I was like, great.
You're like, this can work. Yeah.
I will do that. So I was working at the law firm part-time, helping with their recruiting. And then I was going back to school. So it is the end of school. It's fall of 2008. I am graduating. I am excited. I am like, I'm going to get a job. And the recession is in full swing. So not one person was hiring. And, the Bay Area is filled with actually a ton of natural product companies, and no one was hiring. I looked and I looked and I looked, and it just, I kind of had to accept at that time that I wasn't going to do that. So the law firm was like, well, we'll hire you full time. And I was like, well, I have to pay my rent, and I do like, and so I guess I will go and work there. And so so then I went and worked at the law firm, and, I was doing that work. And again, the people were fantastic there, and they were super supportive and wonderful. And it was a very casual firm. So I actually got to wear jeans to work, which was wonderful. But, anyway, so, I'm doing that, and I'm just thinking to myself, what am I going to do? Am I going to wait? Am I going to keep waiting until this recession ends and I can try and find a job and work in this industry? Or should I just like take the things that I'm creating and just put them out there and see what happens? Yeah. And I, thankfully, naively was like, let's just put the things out there and see what happens. So I launched Etta and Billy, oh my gosh, in 2009.
Wow.
10 years, you guys. 10 years. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So many questions.
Yep.
So I want to back up to the moment that you were like, okay, I'm going to enroll in this school, to get this certificate, because that was like a commitment, right? Like you're now working part-time, you leave this full-time job that was probably paying a decent amount of money. You've fallen in love with this new thing, but you don't know yet if it's going to pay off. But what gave you like kind of the confidence to be like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do it.
Yeah. So I think it was 2 things. One, I was so miserable that I kind of was like, it's either this or I don't know what I'm going to do. Right. Mm-hmm. So there was that. I think I was in a sort of a desperate place for choice, and I was super excited about it. And 2, my family was super supportive. Mm-hmm. And so my parents were like, we'll help you. We'll help you. You're going to work so you can pay your bills, but we'll help you. We'll pay for the program. If you feel like this is what you need, which is pretty amazing. So I think, I was very lucky in that way. I think if I hadn't had that, I may still have done it. I think I probably just would have taken another loan. What's another student loan? Just put it on top. Just
tag it on.
Whatever. I still have the other ones, whatever. No big deal. But I think it was that. It was like this idea that this was what I had in my head, that this is what was going to change the course of my future. Yeah. More so than, college. I think, I was super young. You're so young when you go to college.
Yeah.
not to be tangential about this, but I just think that at that time, I didn't really know. I just had an idea, and then you go through 4 years, and then when you come out and you're like, oh, just kidding.
Like, oh, yeah. I feel
I
like
don't really want
college,
to do
right. I feel like college prepares you just for like maybe working in a corporate environment, getting to work on time, maybe think strategically about things. Like it isn't, for some people, it might be, you might end up working in the field you went to school for. But for a lot of people, I think it's just like preparing them to be an adult.
Yes, totally. Totally. Yeah. And so I think it was just, I was so passionate about it. I was so interested in it, and I hadn't felt that sort of, intensity about something in a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think that if I hadn't shown that to my parents, number one, I don't think they would have said, sure, we'll pay for school. I think, and I also think I would have tried to figure out how to make it happen.
I figure you could just be like, hey, Mom, you gave me the book.
Right. Like, you started this.
You totally
You got to help me finish it. She probably would have taken that argument. She would have been, okay.
But in 2009, right? So you're just like, okay, I just got to maybe just take a chance and do it myself. So what did that look like? Like, what were the beginning stages like? How did you decide on the product and the packaging, and if you were going to go through Etsy or do a website or just do, farmers markets? Like, what did all of that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, I'm just going to answer that farmers market thing. I never thought about doing farmers markets because I'm not a morning person, and you have to be a morning person to do.
Yeah, you do.
Like, really love the mornings. So that was already like an immediate scratch that one off my list. No, thank you. And so I had decided, so we'll go back to the product. So I'll kind of bring it back to, so I've been making soap, and that sort of got me into making other products, because once you get started, you have all these materials and then you're like, well, what else can I make? And then, I'm learning about ingredients, and I'm like, oh, this lotion I've been buying is actually gross. Like, I don't want to put that on my skin anymore. And so I got books on making products. I went that school that I had mentioned. It's called the Nova Studio. They actually no longer, sadly, have the physical location, but you can get their handouts and teaching online. Anyway, so I started going there, and I'm learning about how to make scrubs, and I'm learning about how to make, oh gosh, what else? I think I went to like a bath bombs class, and I went to these like advanced soap making classes, which I so geeked out on. Those were awesome. And then I started TAing for them. So then I got to take these other, it was great. Right. And so I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to do I'll do simple products, or a simple product line, I guess. To be honest, I don't think I was that strategic about it. I think I was just like, I like these things, I'm going to make them. That was definitely my mindset at the time.
People should like these, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I had a lotion bar, soap, and maybe a scrub and maybe a lip balm. And I think that was it. I think that's what I started with. I'd have to go back into my Etsy and see. So, and then I decided I'd do Etsy because I was like, well, setting up a website sounds terrible to me. I am not a technology person. And so I was like, oh, Etsy, this is cool. There's lots of cool stuff on there. I could be on there too. And so I set up my Etsy shop. And then as far as packaging went, my best friend's a graphic designer, which I am forever thankful for her friendship and her design skills. She created my first look. So it was kind of, had sort of a spa vibe. It had these like cream color, brown, a little bit of turquoise colors. Those were my colors when I started out. And I wanted everything to be eco-friendly, from all that education I had done, both from before the herb school, during the herb school, and then after that, like eco-friendly packaging and eco-friendly materials were super, super important to me. Like, I mean, I was insane about finding, like, if we ever went to the store, once I started learning about this stuff, I would drive my boyfriend, now husband, absolutely crazy, because I'd be looking at every ingredient label for everything, food, products, whatever. And he was just like, oh my gosh, can we just buy things? And I'd be like, nope,
No.
you see this ingredient in here? No, we are not buying this. And so I knew that that's because those things were super important to me. There was no way I could create a product line that went against any of that. And so it was all natural, mostly organic materials, and we still are. That's still sort of our basis. But anyway, so I decided on the packaging. My friend designed it. I printed it myself. And packaged up my goodies, and I put them out on Etsy, and I essentially invited friends first, right? Because I was like, I don't know anybody else.
Right.
So my first, I think, 10 orders were all from friends and family, which is amazing. Made me feel
that's good friends and family. Yeah.
Super supportive. And then I started to do events. I started to do craft shows. Because I was like, this is sort of, I feel like when was that, 2009? So craft shows had sort of been starting, but there were the kind that were getting a little more, they weren't like the traditional super craft shows. They were like a little hipper. We'll call them the more hip and modern craft show. So I started doing those. And I did craft shows and sold on Etsy exclusively until 2011. I mean, so it's from 2009 to 2011. That was it, and working full time, right?
Wow.
And in that span of time, I was lucky enough to work with some really amazing stores. My product started to get into different stores and boutiques locally and across the country, and that felt super exciting. And
did they just discover you, or were you like pitching it?
Oh, they discovered me. I had no idea what I was doing.
I was like, look at you marketing.
I went to honestly, the best marketing I did was going to craft shows. Because my very first, I will never forget this. My very first wholesale account came from a craft show. So I think that I had launched the brand right in spring of 2009. My very first or second, I think it was either my first or my second craft show, happened in the fall, like maybe October of 2009. It was an outdoor event, which, by the way, is a terrible idea for bath and body products that are made of natural ingredients and can melt in the sun. But anywho, you live and you learn. So I'm at this craft show. I've got my little booth set up, I'm selling things. I'm super excited. And this woman walks up to me and she starts asking me questions, and she smells the product and she's like, this is great. Do you do wholesale? And at the time I was like, I'm not doing wholesale, but I was like, sure, I do wholesale. Why not?
Why not? Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, what store are you working with? And she was like, oh, I'm the buyer for Paxton Gate. And what was the store that I wanted to be in if I did wholesale was Paxton Gate. And I was like,
wow.
No way. So I was like, oh yeah, I know that store. Wow, I love that store. That was like my external. Internally, I was like screaming and like jumping up and down, like, oh my gosh, Paxton Gate. Ah! And so they were my very first wholesale account. They are still one of my wholesale accounts.
Oh, very cool. That says a lot. Yeah.
Let me tell you. And I love their store. It's amazing. It's a curiosity shop. They've got old science equipment and taxidermied things and butterflies and plants. Anyway, It's fabulous. If you're ever in San Francisco, I highly recommend going to visit.
Oh my goodness. I will put it on Google. Yeah. Flag it.
Do it. And so, that also opened me up to, okay, I'll do some wholesale. So honestly, it's so crazy to think about this now, right? Is for, 3 years? No, Alana, maths. 2 years. 2 years. I'm selling on Etsy, and stores are finding me either through Etsy or doing events. I'm not doing outreach. I'm not like calling people up. People are finding me.
Wow.
And so I know it's just unbelievable for me now to think about that. But anywho, I had no business background, right? None. I told you my story. There is no business background there. I naively just started this business, but I did at least I joined some professional networks before I actually launched my business. I joined there's a handcrafted soap and cosmetics guild, the Indie Business Network. And then because I had been working at the Nova studio, they were, really helpful and generous with sharing information about where, to go if you're trying to get started on actually creating a business. And so like, I went to the Small Business Development Center and I took classes. So I had some basics. I had a business license always from the beginning. I had liability insurance always from the beginning because I was a part of these professional networks. So even though I didn't know anything, I still sort of had these little, I'll call them mini ducks in a row. I will not call them all of my ducks in a row. And so and then I just learned as I went. I either took courses online or when I used to go to the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetics Guild conferences, I would take any classes there that I felt like would help me. I took a ton of classes at the Small Business Development Center. I got their free one-on-one counseling.
Wow.
I tried to take advantage of the resources that I had available to me that were free
right.
or minimal cost. I would get books and I would read those. I would, the nice thing about professional organizations is oftentimes they'll have little free mini classes on things and courses on things. So I definitely would always take those. And then I joined, there's an organization, a nonprofit based in San Francisco called SF Made. And their whole job is to help promote keeping manufacturing jobs alive and thriving in San Francisco. And so it just so happened that, when was it? It was the end of 2010. They, SF Made, I had been a part of SF Made, I think, since the earlier part of 2010. And they were working with, Gap. They were working with the Gap. The Gap is based in San Francisco, right? They were founded here in San Francisco, and they have their umbrella brands. And they were, Gap and Banana Republic specifically, wanted to kind of promote some San Francisco makers is the best way I can say it. So this was that time was when pop-up shops were super new and hot.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to start doing pop-up shops. So Banana Republic was like, we want to do a pop-up shop in our flagship store in San Francisco, and we're partnering with SF Made, and we're going to have them help us find makers to fill the shop. And this was all going on behind the scenes. I had no idea. I'm like working my little job and like filling my orders and taking them with me on the bus to work so I could take them to the post office. And so then I get outreach from SF Made, and they're like, hey, we're in talks with Banana Republic, and they might want to have you in their pop-up shop. How would you feel about that? I would feel pretty amazing about that, actually. Great. And so, my first big connection was working with Banana Republic and SF Made and being in this pop-up shop. And, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
It was so exciting. And they, because they're a big corporation and it's part of probably their normal practice, they would send like weekly sales reports. It was nuts because you're like, oh, whoa.
Well,
hey.
Right. Like this is like the big leagues.
Show everybody in the pop-up shop. So you would see like where your stuff
like everybody. So if you were down below, it's like, hey, we need you to step it up here because so-and-so's whatever is really selling.
Yes. And I was like, this must be how they motivate people. Whoa. It was like a total, I was just like I've worked in retail very minimally, and I was like, this is like a whole new bag for me. Anyway, but that working with Banana Republic and with SF Made and being in that pop-up shop really initiated a big change for me and for Etta and Billy. Basically being in there, I realized that we needed to kind of adjust our branding and our look, because I wasn't really feeling as connected to the original look that we had created for the brand. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to have something that I felt represented the brand more clearly. And also when we were in a place like Banana Republic, that felt like a better match. Like, looking at our products now, when I have pictures of this pop-up when we were in it, they look fine. They look beautiful, but they don't look professional, right? They looked handcrafted.
Yeah.
I really wanted to step it up. So 2011 was a big year for us. We rebranded, got a website. Banana Republic did pop-up shops in 4 of their flagship stores across the country, and we were in all. We were one of the top sellers in all of them, and it was amazing. It was super amazing. And that was sort of the point at which I was like, oh, right, this could work.
You like, okay, this is a business.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I learned I learned a lot from those experiences, because they weren't all positive. Things happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, we can get into the challenges too. Yes, totally. But one quick question was the design you have now, the design you switched to way back when?
Yeah.
Okay, because I could totally see how, because if I saw that like in the store too, I'd just eat it up, because it looks like it's kind of like all natural. It has that, like the design is very clean, but it kind of has like a nod to like when things were also handmade. Yeah. And so I could see how the packaging, like even like the bottles you use, they feel like old school but modern. Yeah. So the brand just really works. I could see it because I was teasing earlier because I was like, man, this looks like something that would be in Anthropology, my favorite store. And you said you were actually in Anthro. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can see this. So I totally understand what you're saying is, you have to up your brand a little bit, right? In order to make sure that it's going to kind of sell in the places that you're going to like position your products in, be it Banana, be it, Anthro or whoever else.
Yes, exactly. And that was one of the biggest and best lessons from that pop-up, was that if I wanted to be in stores, like I actually don't have dreams of being in big retailers. I actually prefer working with small boutiques. But just seeing your product in a place like that and having that perspective, at first I was like, oh gosh, I felt really bad. But then I was like, let's put the business goggles on. Mm-hmm. And let's look at this strategically. Like, there are other brands here and they look very professional. And honestly, that's the only difference. The quality of your product is high. You have great products. That's not what's going on here. It's just the clothing on your brand is just not at the level that it needs to be for where you want it to go. Right. And different people want different things, right? And so that's all okay. It's like whatever works for you and where you want your brand to go, that's what you should do. But it was also very expensive, especially at the time. And I have bootstrapped my business from the beginning, to like do the things. I essentially, just took all the money and just kept rolling it back into the business. So like upgrades have taken me along. Some things have taken us longer than others.
Because like paying, because your photography is beautiful. So I'm assuming you used a professional photographer, unless you're really good at photography.
No. So it's funny. I wish, again, this is like one of those things where I wish we could have some befores and afters. So I did all of my photos for a very long time, like a very long time. And then I would start doing photo shoots, and I would borrow my friend's super fancy camera. Mm-hmm. And then I would have my other friend take the pictures and edit them. And then, I would get them back and toy with them and put them where they needed to go. And it took me a while before I started to actually feel like I needed to pay somebody. But, again, it took me a little while. But then once I did, it was a lot easier to justify because you can see the difference both in quality and in time. I actually am very impressed with some of the photo shoots that we did from way back then. I still use some of those photos because they are amazing. But at the same time, a professional is a professional for a reason.
Right.
They know what they're doing. And so what might take you 4 hours will probably take them at the max 2. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, and my question to you too is, so since you, had this brand for a decade, at what point, because a lot of people do talk about like, hey, sometimes it takes years in order to truly turn like even a little bit of a profit. Like how many years do you feel like it took before you were like, okay, I can actually pay myself?
Many. I think the first time, so I didn't pay myself, I didn't pay myself until I think it was 6 years into business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was about 6 years. And let me tell you, I paid myself $50 a week. So that's not a lot of money. I'm sure that you would agree.
Yeah.
But that was what, that's what I
could
afford.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also when you're growing something and maintaining it, all I was ever thinking about, and I still think about, is that this money, this whatever extra money we make, we need to throw it back into the business. Right. So it took me a long time to realize that I also needed to take care of myself and pay myself. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be able to keep doing this. So it took me a long time to get to that point. And that's sometimes how it goes, right? It also depends on the type of business that you have and what the typical profit margin is for your industry and that kind of stuff. And those are things that you can learn over time, or before you get started, you can always look into that stuff. But it takes a long time. I didn't start doing Etta and Billy full time until 2014. So 5 years.
Right.
5 years into the business, I was doing it part-time.
Then you're like, okay, I think I could do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got to a point that I definitely had a lot of ups and downs over that first 5 years. And there are a lot of challenges. And especially when you're mostly a solo entrepreneur with people helping you here and there. And I definitely had some, working until 4 a.m. and then getting up and going to work and then and so I got to the point where I was just like, I can't maintain that. I can't do a day job and do Etta and Billy and do both of them the kind of credit that makes me feel okay. And it's just hard to give your energy and intention to two different things once you get to a certain place. And so I kind of got to the place where I was like, you need to do this or let it go. That was sort of my thought in my head, is you either need to give this a go full time or you need to figure out how to say goodbye.
Yeah, it was kind of at that point where you're like, I'm at this crossroads, like I'm burning the candle at both ends, like probably just even for your mental and physical health. You're like, okay, I need to make a decision. Yeah,
exactly. And, it was taking a toll on my personal relationship and with my husband, and it was taking a toll on my friendships. And I was like, well, that's no fun.
Yeah.
That's not helping me in my life. And so, I was like, I have to do this. And I think it was just sheer stubbornness and the need to know if it could work that I just made the choice to actually do it versus let it go. I was like, well, I'm going to do this. Well, at least try it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And curious too, at some point, did you start using a manufacturer or do you still kind of do some of it yourself and have a team? Like, how does that all work? Because, you know, the stirring a pot, multiple pots.
Right? Let me tell you. Well, number one, after the stirring, I realized that you can get a stick blender to do that job for you. And so let me just tell you, I haven't hand stirred a pot of soap since 2007. So, but yeah, so one of our products we have, since its inception, we've never made it. We've always worked with a contract manufacturer, and that's our body lotion. And the reason behind that one specifically is we don't have the equipment or the space to do the lotion and do it justice. It needs very, not specialized equipment, but to do the quantity that we do, you need good equipment and you need a dedicated space for just, I think, that product. Personally, that's my perspective on it. The other products we all do in-house. Obviously, we got to the point, though, that it was like, I can't be the manufacturer and the marketer and the strategic business planner and the financial person. Like, you know, you can't, there's not enough hours in the day. And so, right? Like,
because even full time, that's too much for like one person.
Yes, definitely. I mean, yes. And I also, I'm very lucky to have joined some of those, I mentioned earlier, the organizations, the business organizations early on. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got was like, early on, was figure out the things that you're good at and the things that you're not so good at. And really consider hiring people for those things that you're not so good at. And so things like bookkeeping. I'm not so good at bookkeeping. I can do it. I don't like it, but I have to do it. That's part of owning a business. And so I've had help with that almost since the inception of Etta and Billy, even way back in the day. Now, my mother-in-law was doing it for me for product trade. Really in the early days, right? But
like keep it in the family, right? Everybody helping out. Yeah.
But you know, as we grew, I finally was like, okay, I need to have a professional help me with this. And same with the other, you know, pieces of the puzzle. I've had people graphic design come in and out. I've had, I've had marketing help in and out. You know, it's like you kind of have to know where your limitations are, so you can focus on the things that you're good at. And so I got to the point, I'm a good product maker. I would say a pretty great soap maker. Right. But I knew that I couldn't be the only soap maker and product maker because, again, I wouldn't have time to do any of the other things, which is what needs to happen to actually sell those products that you need to make. So I hired my first person to help make product in, I think it was like the middle or latter part of 2014. So that year that I was like, that's it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I also did the first, 5 years of my business out of my apartment. So I launched my business when I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment on Upper Haight in San Francisco. And my then boyfriend, now husband, we were living there, and I had this little rack in the kitchen, and I had taken over the walk-in closet, and then it started to go into the living room and into the hallway, and we're like, okay, maybe we need some more space. And so we moved into a 3-bedroom apartment, and I was like, oh, there's so much space here. I will never grow out of this. And then in like 2 years, like, oh my gosh, all of this stuff is around me. And it's taking over. And it was also, I started to realize the emotional toll it was taking because I'd be home and choosing to not work, but I'd be surrounded by my work and I'd be like, oh, I should be working right now. I shouldn't be watching Game of Thrones. I should be working.
There was no separation.
Yes, exactly. And so that was one of the other things with deciding to go on my own. I was like, we need to get this out of the apartment. And so 2014, I full-time hired my first person to help make product. And that was, of course, very scary because all of these recipes and all of this knowledge had been mine, and I had to share it with somebody and trust them. and then they had to make it. I had to teach them how to do all of the things. But it was amazing. It was amazing.
Wow.
It was one of the best business decisions I ever made.
Because it gave you back time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I let go of that part of it and let somebody else handle it. And, the thing, and, up until I think maybe last year, I would still go and make products sometimes, both from necessity and wanting to. Like I would go make, a batch of soap or whatever. It's only been recently, I'd say in the last year and a half, that I don't really make product. Like I don't make batches for sale. I'll make batches for testing, like for new products or new scents. That's pretty much what I do. Although I do like to get in there sometimes. I did recently. We made 300 bars of soap.
Whoa.
For a chocolate company here in San Francisco. So my other thing is I love to do collaborations.
Ooh,
particularly
and that gets you out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Particularly with food and beverage people. So at least since 2011, we've been doing collaborations where we utilize ingredients from other local makers, or we'll create a product around someone else's product. So we've worked with local bakeries, we've worked with breweries, we've worked with coffee companies and tea companies and this chocolate company, right? And so I got to make 300 bars of soap for them.
Wow.
And that was actually really fun. Yeah.
So okay, because I know I'm going to wrap up here because I could talk to you forever and pick your brain forever. Okay, I'm wrapping up, people. But my question is, I know because I had maybe my first season of the podcast, I had somebody on that did, like natural soaps and natural body products. And it was like a super popular episode. And I feel like that's one of the most popular videos on YouTube because I also put the audio for the episodes on YouTube. And so I know out there that there are a lot of people who have this dream of having this, natural kind of skincare line and, one day getting into like some of their favorite boutiques and, having their favorite celebrities or whatever, using their products, but they just can't seem to get off the ground. So are there any lessons learned or any advice that you can give to other people who are like, oh man, I wish I could get my line off the line too?
Yeah. Yes. Good question. Well, I will say this. It is definitely it's definitely much harder now than it was in 2009. I don't want that to dissuade anybody. There's obviously just more competition is essentially what I think. And that's, I think, true of so many different product categories out there. So I think the biggest thing is like making sure that you really differentiate yourself in some way. That's what I think is really important. So if you are obsessed with, crystals, I'm just pulling something out of the air here, maybe you make your line around crystals, or maybe you love The Simpsons. So maybe you're able to, you actually probably can't do that because, trademarks and licensing. But, I'm just saying like maybe you can be inspired by, I think that having a really specific sort of inspiration point and something you're trying to achieve with the line is what will help. Because I think, as I said, it's just there's a lot of competition out there, which makes it really challenging. But that shouldn't dissuade you from starting. I think it just means that you have to be really persistent. And again, you have to be super sort of niche down about what your line is all about and what makes you different than another product on the shelf.
No, I think that's good advice. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So just two wrap-up questions. First wrap-up question is, how do you stay organized?
Oh, that's a hard one. No. So I am a user of multiple tools. One of my favorite tools is the Passion Planner. So I like physical paper-based organizers. Mm-hmm. And then to also help, because I am often someone who will forget things, I also use Google Calendar a lot. And then I also just started using some task and project management software. The program I'm using right now is ClickUp, but of course I've heard great things about, I've heard great things about Asana and Trello. And then I also use Evernote. I use that to sort of make sure I have things I want to go back to and check out or just bookmark. And then I use Pinterest actually for organization, mostly from a visual standpoint. And I think, those are the things that work for me. I think you just have to figure out, if you're a paper person, make sure you have something that fits in with that sort of system for you.
No, love all the things. And then, so what's your hobby now?
That's a good question. So I think my hobby now is cooking. I think that's the only thing that I consistently do that I would consider more of a hobby. Otherwise, I have dream hobbies, one of which is embroidery.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. I sadly didn't get to take any of the embroidery classes at Craftcation, but no matter, I'm going to try and take a class. So I'd say cooking and cocktail making. Those are those are my hobbies.
Well, I would imagine you're very good at that, especially because it's almost like you're like a little chemist anyway with Etta and Billy. So cocktails should be easy, right?
Yeah. Yes. To be honest, I actually think that I am an improved cook, baker. I'm an improved cook, chef, a baker, and mixologist because of Etta and Billy, and then vice versa. Those, when I practice those skills at home, they actually help me in the R&D lab for Etta and Billy, and then back and forth. It's great. I just infuse everything with my food love.
I can only imagine. And then can you tell just the listeners where to find you? And also, even though we didn't really maybe touch on it too much, but why, maybe why they should buy your products too.
Oh, gosh. That would be a good idea, right?
That might be good,
right? So, Etta and Billy is a small batch farm to bottle skincare company that is inspired by a love of food and drink. And so my purpose is to bring that feeling you get when you're gathered around the table with family or friends and you're enjoying good food and good drink. I'm trying to kind of encapsulate that into body products. So all of our scents and creations are inspired by some sort of food basis and that kind of feeling we get with being with other people and celebrating over food. Where can people find me? They can find Etta and Billy at ettaandbilly.com, and that's all spelled out. You can also find us on Instagram at Etta and Billy, on Facebook at Etta and Billy, on Pinterest at Etta and Billy, and if you are really so inclined, I actually have some DIY videos on YouTube for making. I think there's some food-based ones still up there, and then some masks. I have a really good one, for making your own candied ginger almond butter.
Ooh.
Yeah. So you can check that out too.
Okay, I'm going to make sure I go over and follow you and send it to my mom so she can make it for me.
Woohoo! Yay!
Well, Alana, thank you for just sharing your story and just how Etta and Billy came to be. It was a fascinating story. And what I really loved about it too is sometimes when you just do what you love, find out everything you can by reading books and connecting with people through networking events and just putting yourself out there. It's amazing to me, how sometimes people just find you, you're putting in the work and not, without even having to do a ridiculous amount of marketing and a ton of Facebook ads in the beginning, you could get discovered and see where that takes you. So, I just loved hearing your origin story. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I absolutely love talking about business and I love connecting with you.
So, guys, thanks for hanging out with me for about an hour. Just really quickly, some things that I really want you guys to take away is she started with what she had, right? As far as like her brand, and then rebranded in 2011. So don't let your brand or website or whatever slow you down. Like, do what you can do now. And then as your business gets popular, you can always rebrand it and make it more sophisticated. Also, I love her for businesses that have been around for a while. Her lesson about getting, like, hiring people to do the things that you're probably not the best at. And that's like the only way that you're really going to grow. And then collaborations, no matter where you are in your business, I think is really big. And making sure that you are differentiating yourself because no matter what business you start, there's always competition. I mean, even for me in podcasting and then talking about productivity and making space for your creativity, there are tons of people out there, right? But I tried to put like my own little spin on it. Anywho, there were a lot of gems. Most importantly is I want you guys to take away that she did this for a decade. The first part of it, she still had a 9-to-5 job. So don't think everything has to happen overnight, because I think when it doesn't happen for some people, they feel like they're failures, and you're not. All right. So if you love this episode, if you could just do me a quick little favor and head over to iTunes or the Apple Podcast app and rate me 5 stars and leave a comment if you feel like it, but you don't have to. But it really helps people find the show. And remember also, you guys, if you want to get all of the links that she mentioned, just head on over to nachesnow.com/84. I have the guild she mentioned. If you want to get into soap making, I've got the Nova Studio over there, the herbal studies she went to. I have like everything that she's mentioned. So make sure that you head on over there. And I feel like that's another lesson learned too, is she put in the work in the beginning, right? She didn't have a business background, but she did what she needed to do to educate herself in order to make sure she could have a good start. So yeah, just love talking to her. We had a really, really good time. And I'm so glad I met her at Craftcation. Anywho, you guys have a beautiful week. And I'll talk to you again next week and bring you another amazing guest. Take care.